All right, this is JOSHVLOG episode 3. I am Josh, and this is my vlog. This is kind of a repository for like stray thoughts on stuff that doesn't really relate to bigger video essay or podcast projects. So it'll kind of be a space to, give updates and do some behind the scenes stuff, and kind of be the, more regular short piece that comes out video wise. On the YouTube as I try to grow this channel. Thanks everybody who watched the video essay on The Writer with No Hands and listened to the 2 episodes of the Odd Splice podcast that are now out after a very long hiatus. Today on this thing, we're talking about Silent Running, a sci-fi film from 1972 that's pretty unique and unusual, and for a little added context, serves as this sort of neglected middle child in American sci-fi. So the guy who directed Silent Running, Douglas Trumbull, he did visual effects on 2001: A Space Odyssey and then the early Michael Crichton adaptation, The Andromeda Strain. And so this is his first, and I think one of maybe his only, directorial effort. But he was primarily a visual effects model builder guy on those 2 movies. And so that's the expertise he's bringing here. And then he kind of wanted to do a Jack London style survival story, but in space. And it winds up being like kind of weird and personal and vaguely European. So that comes out in 1972. And then it has really good model work and robot design and all that stuff. Like, it's one of the first, like, truly modern looking sci-fi movies outside of 2001: Space Odyssey, and it was made for, like, comparatively no money. But what we think about when we generally think about American science fiction films, especially since the 70s and especially in regards to the blockbuster era, there's 2001: A Space Odyssey, and then there's Star Wars. So while it's not talked about or not even really widely seen, it's this really important link in American film production in general, and something worth watching on that merit alone. That said, in a lot of ways, it's a much more interesting film than either of those, just because it is not as easily categorizable. It's not quite a big budget prestige picture like 2001, and it's not a sort of recapitulation of the funner, pulpier aspects of American sci-fi. It's very much a science fiction short story of that time. Like, I think it has more in common with John Carpenter's micro-budgeted pseudo-student film Dark Star than it does, Star Wars or 2001, even though it's in that chain of DNA. It's kind of a unique and tough film, because it's very overtly political, and it was speaking into some real issues of the day. Bruce Dern plays Freeman Lowell, who's a gardener / park ranger on a greenhouse ship, and apparently the Earth no longer has any plant life or animal life. They're all in these glass domes that are attached to what were commercial space freighters. As sort of an experimental venture by American Airlines, the plot starts when the company gives the order to shut down the project and destroy the habitats. Bruce Dern, Freeman Lowell, instead of complying, actually murders his crewmates and hijacks the ship, and is just sort of on his own trying to protect, like, the last vestiges of organic plant life from Earth. It seems like it's trying to be a heavy-handed, moralistic tale about environmentalism. It's complicated because he does some bad things and he makes some mistakes. He's a man with righteous intentions, but, his reach sort of exceeds his grasp. Oh, hi, Kirk. Then I read an article this morning called COVID-19 and the Limits of American Moral Imagination. I think we're all well aware of a lot of the systemic problems that are preventing an adequate pandemic response. It sort of pinpoints a couple thought patterns in the American imagination that are just the biggest stumbling blocks. One is that we're using war as a metaphor to talk about or fight COVID-19. The second is that we're all socialized as Americans to think of ourselves as isolated individuals who are capable of making good or bad choices. It's homo economicus. It's the idea that we're all essentially rational actors and we make choices based on the information we're given. So the way that translates specifically to a healthcare setting is that you're an individual who either makes good or bad choices with regards to your health. Like, you're good if you don't smoke, you're good if you exercise, you're good if blah, 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 blah. What that boils down to, if we're all supposed to be individuals, the most individual among us are able-bodied white men. But what this homo economicus idea is, like the rational actor theory, combined with the war metaphor, is, okay, our fight against the pandemic is just, we collectively have to make the right choices, but as individuals. Since everything boils down to an individual decision, the war metaphor is used to cover over or otherwise valorize the death of people who are dying to protect a system. And that system is American capitalism and imperialism in the 20th century. And what the authors argue for is a system based on care for others rather than putting the emphasis on making correct individual choices, because shit's broken. That idea of a rational individual waging a war on something, I think really gets at the core of what the movie Silent Running is about. Freeman Lowell is a man who's dedicated his life to the cause of conservation and a very early mid-70s conception of conservation. So when the company's ending this experiment, he decides to fight for it. He's willing to harm and kill to protect this thing, and then he wants to sort of escape the system or run away. In waging this war, he destroys himself as an individual, figuratively and literally. The movie ends with his suicide. He blows himself up after making the last remaining habitat to some extent self-sufficient, or as self-sufficient as he can make it. He lets it do his own thing, and then he has to destroy himself as an individual. That's my cat. That's hard to deal with. Like, he is the hero of the movie, and we want to identify with him. And I think, personally, I think his cause is righteous, but Freeman Lowell's story shows that an individual can't do it. The man is against an entire system, a system so pervasive, it actually led to the extinction of non-human biological and plant life on Earth. Like, the way he describes it is, the Earth is now just a massive parking lot that is 75 degrees and all of the food is synthesized. Like, everything's just sort of an impoverished copy of the real thing. And this is a man who's interested in authenticity and real life. He wants to care, but he lives in a universe that stopped caring. He lives in a universe where apathy reigns triumphant. He can fight against it, but it's a doomed fight from the start. But so the movie's kind of a bummer, but it's beautifully told and beautifully portrayed, and it sticks in your head. Unlike most sci-fi entertainments that are built to sort of just give you the stock hero's journey, maybe have a few a nice technical innovation or a nice sci-fi conceit to keep you interested, but otherwise you're just going through the same narrative motions. Anyway, that New Republic piece really put things in perspective. It has to be about discussing your ideas and your passions in a way that gets other people to give a shit. And that's the hardest thing in the world, and that's one of the hardest things in the world to do right now, but we're seeing a growing consensus, and most people who do give a shit and who are trying to hold this together, even though the stories we've told about ourselves and the institutions we've put our faith in can't deal with the situation right now. Yeah, that's a lot. Watch Silent Running. It's good, find it. I don't think it's really on any of the free streaming platforms, but it's one that I definitely think you should seek out. Read that article in the New Republic. Yeah, there's that. Otherwise, coming up in the near future, I guested on the podcast Very Legal, Very Cool. Like and subscribe to those guys. They're very funny. They kind of do a little Wikipedia-based comedy podcast that's heavily about conspiracy theory, and it's a very fun and chill listen. That'll be coming out soon, depending on when you watch this video. And then Josiah Sutton from Very Legal, Very Cool was on an episode of Odd Splice that will be launching about the same time. So this is kind of a little teaser, a little lead time on the big Odd Splice, Very Legal, Very Cool big crossover Marvel event. I'm working on a big video essay that might get out of control, but it's about movies that people have actually seen. I'll just tease it. It'll be on Apocalypse Now and The Dark Knight Rises specifically. Pretty excited for that. I kind of want to look at how we think about soldiers. So bringing in a lot of theory on that, a lot of good textual analysis. Anyway, thanks for watching this. Thanks for watching all my stuff. Thanks for looking at my friend's stuff. And we'll see you next time.